Hi, everybody, and welcome to your lesson that's all about long-term and short-term changes that happen in an environment and how the biotic and the abiotic factors must overcome certain situations in order to survive and thrive in their ecosystem. So first, we're going to talk about rapid change examples. So we have volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, forest fires, hurricanes. These are examples of very quick changes that happen sometimes overnight or in just a matter of hours. Now, the biotic factors that live in this area are going to have to overcome these things either by quickly adapting, which we'll talk about in a future lesson, or by being able to move on and find a new place to set up home. So volcanic eruption, as you can imagine, the entire area would be covered in ash, and therefore a lot of their food sources might become inedible. The air quality might not be great, so that they might have to move on and find a new home. Same thing with forest fires. Now, tornadoes and hurricanes might be a little bit different, but we're talking about a lot of habitat destruction with these, where maybe they don't have the resources either in wood, in the forest that they might have previously, or there's other animals that have kind of moved into the area because they are escaping a hurricane or a tornado or some other kind of catastrophic event. So either way, there is something that they have to overcome very quickly in order to survive. Now, in the flip side, we've got long-term environmental changes. Now, these are things that gradually affect the organisms and the traits in the subsequent populations. These are things that take a long time to develop. So deforestation. We all know that deforestation is happening, and we still think that it's happening at an alarming rate. We feel like it's happening very fast, but when you compare it to other things like tornadoes sweeping in overnight or a volcano erupting, deforestation is not going to be as quick as those others. Other things worth mentioning are global warming, urbanization, when we're coming into an environment and disrupting the ecosystem that's there in order to urbanize or build buildings and homes, pollution, and then of course an ice age. So all of these things are going to cause an adaptation to occur over subsequent populations. In previous grade levels, you might have heard us talk about the Industrial Revolution in England and how the smoke from factories were turning trees brown, and how there were moths that lived in the area, and over many populations, or sorry, over many generations, they started to become brown in color, these moths, so that they could blend in with the trees that were around them, because the trees were turning brown due to the pollution. We'll talk about that more in another lesson when we talk about adaptations, but all of these things are at play here over a long period of time. So essentially, a biotic factor that's living in an ecosystem has to overcome these changes usually by adapting to them in order to keep their offspring alive and able to thrive and produce offspring themselves. So here are some factors that might impact an ecosystem. So we've got natural factors that would happen. So maybe an invasive species is moving in, or like the zebra mussels, or maybe there's some sort of natural disaster, like we've mentioned, a wildfire, hurricane, tsunami, tornado, volcano eruption. These are all natural things. But then we've got human input factors as well. We've talked about pollution, we've talked about urbanization and deforestation, hunting and overhunting, but then converting land to something else that we could use it for. All of these things are factors that influence or impact what happens in an ecosystem. So what are some things that we can do to prevent ecosystem disruption? Well, we've been talking about it probably your whole life long. Things like recycling is a great way to start, or replanting trees to help with the deforestation, creating sanctuaries or protected areas. There's marine protected areas all in the ocean. There's also sanctuaries and conservation lands all throughout the earth that are helping to kind of set up barriers so that human disruption is limited. Okay. So those are just some to name a few, but we'll talk about what humans have done and can do further in another lesson this unit. So remember that overpopulation can be a problem. Remember from your 7th grade year that everything must stay in balance. We don't want an overpopulation. We don't want an underpopulation. There's a very delicate balance that we must reach. Okay, so in overpopulation, what naturally happens that can rise a population? Well, if the predators die off, then the prey items are naturally going to have a rise in their population, and sometimes that can teeter the balance there. Okay, so another thing is we need to make sure that we are spaying and neutering our pets like dogs, cats, rabbits, so that way they don't overproduce. Humans, what can we do to help prevent some of those population of some of those species that are in the wild? Well, hunting is one thing that we can do for invasive species that can overproduce very quickly. Think pigs, wild hogs are one thing that, especially here in Texas, we do have a problem with, and there are strong advocates for hunting these animals to keep their population under control. Now, we have to be careful though, because we don't want to hunt so much that we have now a situation of underpopulation. Okay, so what do humans do that lower those populations? Well, their loss of habitat or overpoaching. What naturally happens that can lower these populations in an ecosystem? Well, if there's disease in the population, that can take them out. A change in climate that they're not adapted to, and that climate change has happened rather quickly, that can be a problem. Or a lack of food. Let's say that there's a drought in the area, and now we have animals that are dependent on vegetation, and there's no vegetation for them to eat. These will cause a serious decline in their population. Remember that underpopulation will lead to extinction, so we need to be careful. Yes, we do hunt, and sometimes that hunting is good and it keeps population in check, but we have to make sure that we are not reaching the critical level of overhunting and having an animal or a species near extinction.